The real talk is, I'm the daughter of a car parts salesman and a factory worker. My dad came to the UK with 4 A's in his A-levels, the equivalent of about £50 in his pocket, and that's it. I grew up in inner city Luton. I'm dyslexic, dyscalculic, which is dyslexic with numbers, and a closet introvert, which means that talking in front of anyone, especially a group as esteemed as you today, terrifies me, if I'm being honest. But I'm such a huge fan of Maid and a huge fan of Sarah and Usman, so it was very difficult to say no. So thank you so much for having me. I hope you've had a really great day so far, right? Yeah. Right, no pressure, no pressure. Let's just keep going. Okay, so I thought today what I'd do is talk about 5 stories that have basically shaped my life and the lessons that have come out of it. And hopefully within that there's something that you can take away that's useful as well. And the reason why I think stories and quotes work is that it's weird. The older I've become, the more I've realized that we are all shaped by experiences and stories that have happened in our lives. And usually it's the most silly, smallest thing, like some kid said to you in primary school something, or like your teacher did something to you. But those kind of things stick. And so therefore, it's really important that we recognize that and we reflect on those stories and reflect on those experiences, because they do guide our automatic reactions to things, and they guide our impulses and our judgments. So I thought I'd share those stories with you today, and hopefully you can take a little bit away from it. The first story is a story that happened to me when I was 23, and I was working for Peter Jones from Dragon's Den, and we had gone to a networking event, and it was at a really posh kind of gentleman's club type thing, where you're not allowed your mobile phones or your laptops or anything like that. So we were in the event and we were networking. I'm the only brown person. I'm probably one of 5 females, definitely the only hijabi. So we're in this event. I'm talking to a white guy and a white lady, having a conversation. An old English gentleman comes up to both of us, comes up to all 3 of us, and turns to the gentleman and says, I'm so really sorry, I don't have my watch on me. Do you have the time on you? And the gentleman says, oh, actually, no, I don't have my phone on me, and my time's always on my phone. The lady says exactly the same thing. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have the time on me. I have a watch. I'm about to pick up my wrist and look at it. The old English gentleman looks straight at me and then whispers to the other guy, oh, she won't know, and then walks off, right? I probably cried the hardest I've ever cried in my life in public transport on the way home that night, because it really hurt that no matter what degree I had, no matter what masters I had, no matter how well I dressed, no matter what I'd done to get a really great job, that I was always going to get judged by what I look like and how I am. And that really hurt. To be honest, when I got home, my dad said to me, he heard the story and he was like, so? Typical Asian dad. But he was like, so, what's your problem? And I was like trying to explain to him, like, it's really hurtful. And he was like, look, this is going to happen. And the moment he said that, the moment something kind of dawned on me, which is so true, which is, it is going to happen. No matter what you do, no matter where you are, it's going to happen. It's how you deal with it that matters. People are always going to judge you, but it shouldn't be something that holds you back. Often it's a projection of their own insecurities. It shouldn't be the thing that holds you back. But what's really, really important is that if people are going to judge you anyway, that you shouldn't give them the stick to hit you with. And what I mean by that is that in that situation, had he asked me for the time and I'd come out with, yo fam, like, don't carry watch me either, that would have probably got me in a lot of trouble. And the thing is, I see it a lot with kids today, is that they're not able to articulate themselves properly. I used to be that kid. I used to be the kid that used to say butter, party, water, Saturday, in it, all the time. And to be honest, when I go home, there's a time and a place where you can talk like that and you can get away with it. But actually, in those situations, you do not want to give people a stick to hit you with. So being articulate, learning your area really, really well is so important, so that when you're given the opportunity, people are actually quite surprised by you. In another scenario, when we were doing some networking, I was able to sort of quote economist quotes and statistics and whatever. And a guy said to me, you know, I've never really thought of anyone being able to do business that wears a headscarf or that's actually a female in the food industry, but you've completely changed my perception. And that's the kind of thing that I'd urge all of you to do, is to make sure that you carry the flag and you open doors for other people. The second story is actually not a story about myself. It's about a lady that's very, very close to me. Anyone that's heard me speak before would have heard me speak about a lady called Khadija. May God give her peace. She was the wife of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and a billionairess in today's terms. So absolutely huge in terms of her wealth and stature. Died without a single coin in her possession. Just to put that into perspective, we have multi-billionairesses in our world today. Bill Gates Foundation, for example. But Bill Gates is not going to give away so much of his money that he ends up being living in a one-bedroom flat in Hull. Sorry for anyone who lives in Hull. A one-bedroom flat in Hull where there's only half a loaf of bread in the cupboard. That's not the level of wealth that they're about to give away. This is what she did. The Prophet, peace be upon him, was the leader of his community, but was amongst them in the sense that he used to tie a rock against his stomach to stop him feeling the pain of hunger. He was their leader, and people would give him gifts and people would give him wealth, but that was the level of effort that he would go to stop himself feeling from hunger, because he didn't want to sleep on a full stomach when his neighbors were hungry. So here you have a couple that in today's world would have probably been like the Jay-Z and Beyonce of this world in terms of their power, right? You have a woman who has the most amount of wealth in the world, and you have a man who has the most amount of power and ability to convert people by the way he speaks and what he has to say. The most powerful couple in the world died penniless. They used all of their wealth for good. And it has shaped me incredibly. Shazia mentioned earlier about the business. ieat is now in all 4 of its major supermarkets within the first 500 days. And as a thank you to God and as a thank you for being here where I am today, we'd like to launch something called the Khadija Foundation at the beginning of next year, which is a foundation that honours Khadija by using the business wealth to support community projects and to support those who need it, including people at Maid. Okay, so the third story, when I came in today, someone said to me, please tell me you're telling the tea story. So if anyone that is, how many people know the tea story? Just, okay, 1. Okay, I'm really sorry, you're gonna have to hear it twice. I'm really sorry, but that's a good number. Okay, so it's one of my most favorite stories, right? Before ieat had launched, we had a supplier that wanted to get our business so much, harassing me over email. And eventually I said, okay, look, we'll set up a meeting. And we set the meeting up, and my assistant had gone into the room beforehand and said, look, we're going to start in a few minutes. Shaz is just praying. So here's the problem. My name is Shaz. It's Shazia, actually, but it's often shortened to Shaz, which is a unisex name. Shazad, Shazan, lots of guys. And it turns out that the guys that I were meeting had assumed over email that I was male. Okay. So I walk into the room a few minutes later. Before I even had a chance to say anything, one of the guys approached me and says, oh, brilliant, Shaz is just praying, assuming that I'm his wife. Shaz is just praying. Would you be a dear and make us a cup of tea, please? Right? His colleague didn't even look up from his iPad and said, yeah, milk 2 sugars, please. So I smiled. I went and made them their tea, because clearly they're dehydrated. I went and made them their tea, and can you just imagine the look on their face when I came and gave it to them and then sat at the head of the table, introduced myself as Shazia Saleem, the founder of ieat Foods, the person who we're looking to do business with today. I mean, it was just priceless. But I've got to say, the reason why I love that story so much is because I know so many girls who think that their role in life is just to make tea. And that's the really sad thing. They question whether or not they're even capable of achieving more. And that terrifies me, that you've got girls out there who don't know what their capacity is. I know women who have businesses and they have happy husbands and they have children. I know girls who have happy parents and they have businesses and you've got doctors, you've got scientists, you've got whatever you want. There are girls who are achieving so many things. And what I'd urge all of you to do is to be Khadijas in whatever you're doing. And I say this to the men as well. Be Khadijas, be good people. So use your acumen and your intelligence that God has given you, but to do it with good and to strive until you're successful in the eyes of Allah. So far those 3 stories I've talked about have been about fear, essentially. So what happens if you're judged? What happens if you're ridiculed? What happens if you lose your money and your status and your wealth? You know, you've all chosen to be here today to do a good thing, and I'm sure that this is a room full of people that want to do good things. A lot of it comes down to feeling lost as to how to make it happen, and what happens if. You know, what do I do if this happens? Or what do I do if that happens? What if someone laughs at me? What if someone says that, oh, there's no way of being able to achieve that? And that brings me on to my fourth story, which is actually a story about a quote from the brilliant Nelson Mandela. So you all heard Ibrahim Rasool speak earlier. One of his good friends is Nelson Mandela. And the quote is, "The greatest glory in living is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall." So I'm going to say that again. The greatest glory in living is not in never falling, but in rising every time that we fall. So to flip that on its head, what Nelson Mandela is saying there is to succeed in life isn't to go through life plain sailing with nothing ever hurting you. That's not it. If you've done that, you've not won, right? The greatest glory is in rising every time that you fall. So if to break that down into three parts there, you've got three lessons. One is acknowledging that falling is inevitable. And it links back to the first story with my dad telling me the advice that he gave me, which is acknowledging that stuff like that is going to happen. It's fact. And actually, at the risk of sounding like a Muslim Dot Cotton, I'm going to quote a verse from the Quran, chapter 2, verse 155. I won't get the cigarette out, don't I? So the verse is, "And certainly we shall test you with something of fear, hunger, loss of wealth, lives, and fruits. But give glad tidings to as-sabrun." As-sabrun is the collective term for those who are patient. So here you have God, who in the Quran we believe is the word of God. Here you have God telling you that falling is going to happen. He is going to test you. Fact. So what happens then? It's about giving glad tidings to as-sabrun, those who are patient. And one of the best ways of enduring patience is to fall with grace. One of the bits of advice that I give you is to fall. If you're going to fall quickly. And when you're down, is to actually take a moment to understand the perspective from down there. Because it's quite a unique perspective that you probably won't get if you stand up too quickly. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's really, really important, because that perspective from down there is probably what's going to stop you from falling again. So acknowledge that falling is inevitable. If you're going to fall quickly and learn while you're down there. And the third thing, and the most important thing, is having something to rise for. And I say something and not someone. Because if you attach your need to rise to someone, what happens when that person's not there? It's better to attach your need to rise to something. And as Muslims, you should attach it. It should come from the need to please Allah. But actually, that has many different stems. So whatever your need to strive and your need to get back up for, as long as it stems from pleasing Allah, then you're on a good track. When I was a kid, my nickname was a stacker. Right. Now, for those of you who don't know, a stacker is someone who is able to fall a lot. Right? Stacks it. Right? I had the ability to fall upstairs, which was really good. Right? It's actually quite difficult. Falling downstairs is easy, anyone could do that. Falling upstairs is actually a skill and an art that I have mastered over time. And one of the things I learned about when you fall, what's the number one thing that goes through your head when you fall? The number one thing. And what's the number one question? Who saw you? Right? Not are you okay? That comes later, right? I don't care if I've broken my leg, right? I will defy medical science and I will get up because people are looking, right? So as a kid, I used to be called the stacker, and the number one thing that I used to always worry about was who's watching me. We, as a people, I think we're so obsessed with who's seen us fall. Why do we not care about who's seen us rise? When you rise, be very, very conscious that people are watching you and people take inspiration from the way that you rise. So be very, very mindful of that. Okay, last story. How am I doing for time? You okay? Okay. So I've spent about 80% of my story so far on things around fear and getting over your fears. And the reason why I've done that is because I think it's really important to create a really solid foundation. If you get those things right, no matter what plan you then choose to execute, you'll always come back to that foundation. As long as you get the foundation right, inshallah, you'll be fine. But the last story I'll dedicate to an actual execution. So a lot of you are here because you want to do good things. A lot of you are probably wondering how to do it, and the tools and the way that you should go forward. I've just come back from Senegal. I went to visit a village there with Human Appeal. And one of the stories I found there really struck me was a story around a children's centre. It's called the Empire Children's Centre in Dakar. And they deal with boys who are on the streets, basically, and they take them in and they give them a home and they give them an education. When you do a bit more digging, you find out why they're on the streets. And it's because in the villages, people dressed as imams or religious scholars have gone to families in the village and have told the parents that if you give me your son, if you pay money and give me your son, I will take them to the city and I will teach them the Quran. They will be able to memorize the Quran and they'll be able to get you into heaven on the Day of Judgment. But at the same time, they'll also be able to learn and teach Arabic, so therefore earning you money. Now, as a parent who's, realistic sort of income levels are probably quite low, that might sound like quite a godsend. So the family save up quite a lot of money and they send their boys, 8, 9 years old, tops, right? They send their boys with these guys. The guys take them to the city, abuse them, rape them, put them on the streets and make them work and beg for money. The really sad thing is, of the kids that manage to escape, right? Of the kids that manage to escape, they are so scared and so convinced that their parents have sold them and betrayed them that they don't even want to go back home. Because to an 8 or 9-year-old, you're at home one day, all of a sudden some man's taken you off. It's quite a natural thing to think that your parents have sold you in some way or done something to you. So they don't even want to go back home. So these kids end up being on the street. And that's where the Empire Centre takes them in. We must have heard about 100 or so stories of this. Now, charities do some really great work. So Human Appeal are working really hard to build a centre for these kids. But everyone in this room has the brain and the intellectual capacity to go a little bit further than that, which is to bring some unique and fresh thinking to the problem. So who is, and it struck me when I was there, who is dealing with the authorities to find these men and put them in prison? Who is dealing with the villagers to tell the villagers that when these men come, that they're talking out their backside? Excuse my French, but that's how annoyed I am by the whole situation. Who is working with the villagers, giving the villagers and the parents hope, so that when anyone comes with any kind of story, they've actually got a better future and a better ability to earn money for their family by staying with their parents? That's actually the role of people like you. Because people like you aren't here just to fundraise and give money to charitable projects. Of course, what Human Appeal are doing is brilliant and it's definitely needed. But I'm hoping for people that are involved with MAID and people who have any kind of campaign conscience is that actually you're able to ask deeper questions and to reframe the conversation and actually go a little bit further to stop the stuff happening higher up the chain. So, in summary, the Goliath here, you know the story of David and Goliath. The Goliath here is the status quo, right? The Goliath here is tacit compliance, laziness, and apathy. And here, I would hope, we'd have a room full of Davids. We all have good intentions here. A lot of you have given up your Sundays to listen to a room full of speakers. And you've obviously done that for a reason. And so let's just be really clear that I hope you leave here inspired. I hope that you leave here with a real focus on what your passion area is. And that's probably the best bit of advice I could give you is focus on what really, really drives you. Whether that's ethical fashion, whether that's deforestation, whether that's eradicating poverty, whatever it is, that you have a real passion for it. And that's the thing that will keep you going when times get tough, because they will. And I hope that you use your intellectual energy to take the solution into a space where it hasn't been before, because that's where you'll really become Davids, but pioneers as well. And I hope that in doing that, you'll be supported by myself one day with the Khadija Foundation. You'll always be supported by MAID, and you'll always be supported by God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May God bless you all. Thank you so much.